There's no planet B here. Oh wait, that's what our speakers are going to talk about. Please meet LUBOMILA Jordanova, co-founder and CEO at Plan A, MARC GIGON, Executive Director at Microsoft, moderated by SEBASTIEN TOUPY, advisor at Greentech Alliance.
First up, I would love to introduce talking about No Planet B, how to build sustainable futures together. And, we have to talk about this because, when it comes to things like recycling our, household waste as individuals, fact is that big corporations are still running very unsustainable businesses, and we need to find a way to reduce carbon footprint, save our home planet. So we're going to be going into a really honest conversation covering both startup and corporate points of view. Doing that, it's my great pleasure to welcome a good friend, LUBOMILA Jordanova. She's here with me in Berlin, not actually in the same room as me, just in the same city. Co-founder and CEO of Plan A. Marc GIGON, Executive Director at Microsoft. And interviewing them will be SEBASTIEN TOUPY, another friend from the Netherlands, advisor to Greentech Alliance.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sebastian. I have the pleasure to be moderating this session around No Planet B, and I couldn't be more excited for this. So I'd like to thank the Emerge team for actually placing sustainability as sort of such an important part of the event and opening up here for us today. So thank you very much, LUBOMILA and Marc, for being with us. So LUBOMILA Jordanova is CEO and co-founder of Plan A, as Stuart mentioned, and Marc is the executive director at Microsoft. And I'd like to start with you, LUBOMILA. So we know that today sustainability and green tech have been almost trendy topics that many large corporations suddenly want to focus on, but it hasn't always been the case. And as someone who's been an advocate for sustainability and climate action for many years now, can you tell us a little bit about how you started Plan A and what is the problem that you're focusing on today?
Hi to everyone, really good to see you, Seb. It's really exciting to be able to speak about sustainability today because it feels like there's not only momentum, but there's also a lot more of understanding of why this problem really matters. When we kicked off our journey in 2015, 16, and kind of officially 17, there's very little willingness for neither companies nor individuals to change because it never felt like this topic went out of some sort of a niche group of environmentalists, eco-activists. And what has happened to us since then is that we've developed multiple products that enable businesses to actually become an active participant in the climate change fighting process movement and embed this as a key positive KPI in their value proposition. Our main product is a software that enables businesses to monitor their carbon emissions and ESG performance and then tangibly understand how to reduce their emissions and improve on any kind of other parameters related to environmental, social, and governance topics.
Great. Well, I mean, I think it's come a long way from the early days of when you started Plan A, when I see the progress that you've made, especially in the past year. So thanks for that, Lou. We'll come back to a lot of the things that you do in a minute. But first, I'd like to introduce Marc. So I believe Microsoft needs no introduction at this stage, but as executive director of, one of the world's tech giants, can you tell us a little bit about your role within Microsoft and the ambitions in creating a sustainable future?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Sebastian. Yeah, I mean, indeed, Microsoft is on a ambitious journey to with a high commitment on sustainability. We've made the decision early 2020 to accelerate on our commitment goals. And I like this idea that this is a growing journey. And we know that we have the resources, we have the power, we have the people, we have the financial resources to do more. And we've decided to act on 4 different topics: so water, waste, carbon, and ecosystems. So just very briefly, we want to be carbon negative by 2030. We want to reduce and remove all the carbon that the company has emitted since its founding by 2050. We want to be zero waste across our direct footprint by 2030. As said, we want to protect more land that we use by 2025. And we're building what we are calling the planetary computer. But basically, these are environmental data that are available. We've got today 10 petabytes of environmental data. I'm not from an engineering background, so 10 petabytes does mean for me just a lot of data available for companies to have access to those critical environmental data sets. So, and last, water, as I said, so we want to be water positive by 2030. So yes, indeed, we've got a high stakes on sustainability, high commitments, and an ambitious roadmap and resources to get there.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely hear some ambitious goals over there. And we'll come back to some of the numbers that you've mentioned in a second. But I wanted to sort of move to my first question for LUBOMILA. So I know that Plan A is, helping companies to measure and reduce their carbon footprint. You talked about ESG measurements while also sort of creating an employee culture of sustainability and pushing not just top management, but then also a lot of the individuals working for those companies to be more sustainable. What are the hurdles and perhaps some misconceptions that you encounter in your day-to-day when talking to potential partners and clients?
I think there's a lot of ambiguity with sustainability for many companies because it feels like this huge, overwhelming topic that they cannot tackle if they're not the size of Microsoft, because Microsoft, as mentioned by Mark, is a company with resources and also with the good intentions and also tangible results on addressing that. The truth is that sustainability is an actual, opportunity for any company that is on this planet, but it needs to be perceived as a journey rather than as something that happens overnight. You tick off a box and then all of a sudden all is done. One common misconception is that if you kind of pay off your carbon accounting and compensation in terms of offsetting, then you're done. Actually, this is really hurtful of a vision because it doesn't allow us to really focus on what the science tells us, which is essentially that we need to tangibly reduce our emissions. And this needs to happen by far the fastest in the history of humanity by 2030. Another misconception is that it's, as you mentioned, also like a top-down only solution or top-down decision. Actually, a lot of the clients that we have been the result of kind of a lot of pressure internally or kind of a lot of engagement with the employees who have understood how important this is to them. And they have engaged the management to make a decision and put this on top of their agenda. And then a final one is the fact that sustainability is about planting trees. I think we have a long way that we've gone since probably 2019 when this became maybe a prime way of thinking about sustainability. But all these things that Mark mentioned, and if you add to that also like for companies that produce a lot, all of the residual material and also waste that is related to their production is a complex set of actions you need to take and topics you need to tackle in order to really comprehensively address your sustainability agenda. So I guess, we've passed hopefully the stage of thinking that it's all about trees, but these are a few just examples of common misconceptions.
No, absolutely. And we'll get back to the full strategy as well with Mark in a second. In this case, when you're talking about sort of thinking beyond trees, like I know that Plan A has launched recently a campaign against greenwashing, and I know that Mark was sort of, will follow up on this too, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you're trying to do with this campaign and what you're fighting against?
There's actually been a lot of momentum about the topic of greenwashing, and we feel really lucky to have been kind of proponents of this discussion early on, and now there's just so much follow-on activity. Ever since we launched the initiative, we've been contacted by the Commission itself, by some people on the Green Party side and so on. So like there's been clearly a lot of positive response. The idea of greenwashing, for those maybe unfamiliar, is when you use sustainability activities as a chance for marketing rather than for actual impact. And the whole movement started with the idea of, in hotels when you go and they say, please don't put your towel on the floor because you are essentially, killing the planet. Planet is going to be totally okay. It's all about humanity being saved, but this is kind of where the movement started. And our whole point is that we really want to engage kind of the European Commission, but also in the UK, some of the climate bodies with regards to setting certain boundaries for what can be claimed so that people are not misled in all these sustainability announcements that are being made. Carbon neutrality is one issue. There's many companies that announce it without calculating their scope 3. Another issue is about like what kind of data is being gathered and what's the quality of the data. And all of these things, when you put them together, actually make it quite easy for someone to have loopholes to be perceived as sustainable while doing nothing close to what companies like Microsoft, or we can take other examples of clients of ours like Gani, for example, a fashion company, or Cowboy, e-bike company, are doing, where they tangibly put effort and resources into this.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing that up. I think it's a very important topic, and that brings me directly to my next question to Mark. You've mentioned some very ambitious targets in 2030 and by 2050 for Microsoft to sort of remove all carbon emissions emitted since the foundation of the company in 1975. Can you tell us a bit more practically how you're actually planning to do this? What partnerships are you setting up in place? What specific organizations are you going to be working with to carry out this massive undertaking?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good one indeed. Let's get practical details is what matters. In fact, in sustainability, we've got to act. There's a dedicated organization at Microsoft dealing with sustainability, but on top of that, this is more a full commitment from all over the company. I mean, not only this dedicated organization, but all people working in operations, sales, marketing, partners. They all have their bits, and they all have their action on meeting those goals that we've set for ourselves, with five pillars, five streams of action. The first one is the operation. So we want to take responsibility on the carbon, water, waste, and land footprint across our own operations. That's point one. But we want also develop product and services that will help our clients to reduce their carbon emissions and to address their own sustainability goals. We also want to help our partners. Microsoft is a company that has partnering in its DNA. We are supporting great companies to create new products that help also some of the customers to reduce their carbon emissions and meet their sustainability goals. We want to also act on policy. We really believe that this is something where we have our word, and we've got you mentioned, LUBOMILA, your actions with the economic with the European government and bodies. I think we want to use our voice to on climate related public policy issues. We want to support new public policies related to carbon and carbon footprint and environment. And last, employees. I mean, we believe that employees are the main asset of Microsoft, and we want to make sure that each every employee has the ability to do something, to bring its share, its 2 cents to make things happen. You mentioned partners, and I'm talking a lot about partners, and that's something absolutely key for Microsoft. Just to mention that we know that this is something that cannot be done by ourselves. We need to partner with some other organization and companies. Just to mention the partnership we're having with the Transform to Net Zero Coalition, or the signing the climate pledge that we've signed together with some other with 100 and more companies. So yes, indeed, that's not only an organization, but that's a full motion of the company, and each everyone is dedicated to that.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that this is not something that can be done if only a handful of people are involved, and it's probably the same for you, LUBOMILA. Like, can you tell us a bit the type of relationship that Plan-A is building with its partners, and sort of how that sort of contributes to that ambitious mission that you have?
So if I understood the question correctly, because there was a bit of a connection issue, you're asking what kind of companies we work with.
Yeah, exactly. And the relationship that you build with those partners.
Of course, yeah. We have been working with a wide range of companies since the beginning, and definitely in the last few months and year, there's been a lot more focus on corporates. The reason being that there's a lot more legislation, so they're definitely pressured to start acting really tangibly and organizing their data, organizing their action on hitting net zero or setting up an agenda for that. We work with a lot of fashion companies, also financial institutions, banks, for example, Société Générale, venture capital funds like Albion in London. Since recently, we also work with a lot of e-mobility, which is really exciting, e-scooters, electronic bikes, also automotive. One of our prime clients is BMW Foundation, and also other subsidiaries of the big corporation. Kind of this wide range also includes, of course, tech companies as well as construction companies. We work with kind of many different industries, but there's always a unifying element around them. First of all, they're all committed to really embedding sustainability into the way they operate, because they know that this is something that really matters to the future, not only of our planet, but to their company in terms of their revenues. And the second is the fact that they have been willing to engage these employee kind of participants in the whole story, and also they're willing to engage their customers as well as partners. And for those that maybe don't know how emissions are calculated, actually partners and third parties related to services and goods fall within the emission accounting of any big company or small company, which is why it's of utmost importance to engage everyone, because we're all connected with the way we consume, the way we produce, and the way we purchase.
All right. And I mean, you're talking about this engagement, right? And working with partners in different ways. I would like to go back to you, Mark, and sort of this piece that I saw where Microsoft has launched the Azure Sustainability Calculator. That's one of your ways in which you want to engage with partners and help other people to actually, reduce their carbon emissions and their IT infrastructures. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you do that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for that. Indeed, we've introduced the Microsoft Sustainability Calculator. There's the V1. There will be a further version in the future. But that's one pillar of the action, enabling our clients with technology that to help them to meet their own goals. But we are also partnering with many other companies to get new products on the market, or to help them, as I said, meeting their goals. For instance, with BP, so we've formed a strategic partnership to further digitalize a transformation in the energy systems and to advance the net zero carbon of each company. We have also doing some significant investment with Northern Light. Northern Light is a project you may have heard about carbon capture in the North Sea. This is a project that gathers Equinor, Shell, and Total, and we're very happy to support them and bring the technology edge that we're having to get this project being a success, and to help to scale and reduce cost of these promising CCS technologies. The partner ecosystem, and so not only our products with the sustainability calculator, but the products that are enabled by our technologies, such as, we're working with partners like ABB or Schneider. Those companies, they are already today, they have on the market great products that help companies doing more and reducing their carbon emissions. So as I said again, yeah, that's we've got our own products. The sustainability calculator is one of them, but we've got also all the products that are enabled by our technology, but products that are built by our partners.
Absolutely, and I guess this collaboration is incredibly important for both of you to sort of develop on that journey. LUBOMILA, Mark just mentioned a little bit sort of the willingness in this case at Microsoft to be able to build those relationships and to help partners to create new products around sustainability. How do you sort of see the future of those collaborations that you're having with both large as well as smaller organizations with Plan A on helping people to get on their sustainability journey?
It's been really interesting to observe what's happened over the last few months, because we might have started 2.5 years ago with the software, with the prime focus on developing a standalone tool that essentially enables itself to give this layer of environmental analysis. But over the last few months, we actually have entered into collaborative and partnership setups where our tool is just like the layer on top of other tools. So we become essentially this environmental scientific element of an existing ecosystem that either gathers data or is essentially analyzing certain processes within companies. I think when it comes to the future of our work and also the whole field, environmental data is going to become the equivalent of financial data. So the way we look into any movement, any activity within a company will be analyzed from these angles in terms of how much money it costs, but also how much CO2 it costs. So it's inevitable that we'll see a lot more of kind of blending of different tools with this environmental analysis to allow essentially for companies to inform their clients of what is the most sustainable option, as well as what is maybe the cheapest or what is the most optimal in terms of cost. And we're actively working on actually empowering this because As you know, we're heavily focused on the scientific element. We have a huge scientific team in-house. And this is what we can provide and bring to the table for any company, regardless if they are in the beginning of their journey or somewhere a bit more advanced in kind of their path.
Absolutely. I guess there is one thing that is intriguing when you're talking about how you're helping those companies, and especially when I see the efforts that's been happening here in Europe. And one question that I feel we can't really ignore is sort of when talking about carbon emission, how these emissions are actually distributed, especially on a global scale, right? We see a lot of companies making moves, like regulators also trying to change things over time. But while Europe is trying to make a lot of progress on that regulatory front, China's emission have more than tripled in the last 30 years, and they account for almost 27% of the world greenhouse gases today. So how do you sort of see this shift in the coming years, and what are the implications of, you know, what we're trying to create here in Europe and then in North America versus what's actually going on in the rest of the world, and how this sort of impacts sustainability overall? Whoever wants to go first.
Oh, please, LUBOMILA,
Yeah.
start, please.
I think both of us have a lot to share on the topic. As I remember our previous conversation, we see Europe and US as a pivotal kind of stakeholder to influence where the world is shifting in terms of their sustainability choices, because the truth is that as much as we think that the emissions are not created in Europe, they are quite often created by the demand of Europe and the US. So we have a lot of responsibility in the way we inform our choices and kind of the way we communicate and engage in these bilateral relationships. It was really interesting. Yesterday I was speaking at an event, and one of the speakers was from the European Commission, and he was explaining how the transatlantic relationship can literally influence the whole agenda of the world. And I fully agree with that, because I think we have a lot of responsibility and a lot of knowledge and a lot of advancement on the topic that must be used for the good cause, because there's still a lot of purchasing power that can allow for, you know, the discussion to happen in a positive way.
Yeah. How do you see that, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I fully support what LUBOMILA just said. I mean, I think indeed it depends very much on what we do as well as, I mean, as European citizen. I'm from Paris, as you can see from the background, but and indeed that's a world play, and indeed the emissions in China are growing really fast, and we saw also in the past that CO2 per capita in the US was much higher than anywhere else in the world. But we're also seeing that this is changing, and we are, with the new Biden administration, we can see that there's a new agenda in the US. So we have we know that all countries in the world, they will shift, they will increase their commitments. We believe that this is no longer a game, this is no longer just words. They will do things. World regulation is a challenge. We saw that with the Paris Agreement, but it works. And eventually, at the end of the day, there's no solution but a world regulation on what's going on, with a fair share of each country on what they've got to do. So not an easy subject, but it's very encouraging to see what has happened even in the past weeks on that very subject.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to sort of wrap up with one question, sort of both of you, right? Like, what would you suggest to corporations as well as startups that are listening to us today, who are considering to make their first step towards becoming more sustainable? Maybe start with you, Mark.
Well, I think first start by recognizing the risk and the opportunity. I mean, we are seeing a lot of founders here at Emerge, and that's great, and that's very encouraging. I would recommend you to just recognize that there's a risk and that there's an opportunity for your business. Start doing small things and start the journey. That's a journey. It's been a journey for Microsoft. It's going to be a journey for you, whatever the size of your company is.
Great. And what about you, LUBOMILA?
I think twisting or kind of following up on what Mark was saying, because I'm fully aligned with it. I think, you know, there's a lot of risk to be recognized, because you can't manage a business on a failing planet. And with no knowledge about this, you actually can turn this in a competitive advantage, because there's still a lot of opportunity for being a pioneer in the space and taking your whole industry on a journey essentially altogether to change. We work with a lot of companies that have been paving the way for their whole industry in terms of getting different even competitors to think about how they can shift. And I think, you know, even Microsoft is a fantastic example of what has been like a big nudge for the whole tech industry with the ambitious plans that they've set. And there's many of other examples that can be given, but way too little still. So I would say, you know, take the chance on being the pioneer and follow what the data tells you.
Couldn't have said it better. Like, start on the journey and look at that opportunity. Thank you so much, Mark and LUBOMILA,
Please,
for
thank
being
you
with
so
us
much. Thanks for having me.
and for sharing this.
Thanks.